Hello and welcome to class SS1 Economics students. Is your economics teacher Mr. Labi. In today's topic, we are going to be treating equilibrium analysis, and that is price determination. By the end of the class, you should be able to explain price determination. You should be able to explain some concepts under price determination, which includes excess demand, excess supply, equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity, and the equilibrium position. Also, we should be able to attempt questions involving solutions on equilibrium position. Let's start. Firstly, price determination. In a free market enterprise where prices of goods are determined by the forces of demand and supply, price determination refers to the determination or the making of prices of goods as a result of the interaction of the market forces of demand and supply. When market forces of demand and supply interact, they come together to determine price. It is assumed that when demand for a particular commodity increases while supply is constant, prices will definitely increase because demand induces prices to increase. But if supply increases while demand is constant, then prices will reduce. Also, if demand and supply increases at the same time, prices remain constant. And we are going to explain more of these reactions in SS2 when we are explaining equilibrium analysis involving changes in prices, changes in equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. But for now, I want you to know that the interaction of the market forces of demand and supply come together to determine prices of a good at a particular period of time. Having said this, the diagram showing in your screen above depicts what is referred to as a market analysis, showing your quantity demanded over time, the quantity demanded curve, and the quantity supply curve. The quantity demanded curve slopes downward from your left to the right, while your quantity supply curve slopes upward from your right to the left. Now, in the diagram, the point at which your demand curve meets your supply curve is referred to as your equilibrium position. Any point that is above the equilibrium position is referred to as excess supply, because at that point, the quantity supplied is more than the quantity demanded. Any point below the equilibrium position is referred to as your excess demand. This is because the demand curve is more than, or is further to the right, more than your supply curve. Now, the equilibrium price is shown on the vertical axis. That is from the point, as I told you, that the point at which the demand curve meets the supply curve is referred to as the equilibrium position. Now, if you trace that to the vertical axis where you have your price, what we have is your equilibrium price. If you trace from the equilibrium position downwards to the horizontal axis, what we have is the equilibrium quantity, that is your equilibrium quantity demanded and quantity supplied. Now, having said this, I haven't explained equilibrium positions, equilibrium demand, equilibrium quantity demanded and quantity supplied, excess demand and excess supply. We are going to look at how to determine or how to calculate your excess supply and your excess demand. Now, based on equilibrium analysis, we'll look at equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity, excess demand, and excess supply. Firstly, equilibrium is referred to as a position in which quantity demanded equals to quantity supplied. And we said that excess supply refers to a situation in which supply is more than demand, while excess demand is a situation in which demand is more than supply. Now, we've also considered a diagram showing excess demand, excess supply, and the equilibrium position. We have a question here. And the question states that given the supply and demand functions, QS equals to 20 plus 2P and QD equals to 35 minus P, calculate the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity, that is quantity supplied and quantity demanded. Find the quantity bought and sold, that is find the quantity demanded and supplied in the market at 2 naira, 8 naira. C says determine the excess demand or excess supply that at 2 naira, at 8 naira, at 2 naira and at 8 naira. Then plot a diagram, that is plot a demand and supply curve for your answer. Okay, now solution. Firstly, to calculate our equilibrium demand and equilibrium supply, you must understand that at equilibrium, quantity demanded equals to quantity supplied. In this question, our quantity supplied function is 20 plus 2p, which is up there, and quantity demanded function is 35 minus p. Now, in order to calculate our equilibrium price, we have to equate quantity supplied and quantity demanded. Doing so, we say at equilibrium, quantity demanded equals to quantity supplied. Quantity demanded is 20 plus 2p. Quantity supplied is 35 minus p. Now, doing a little bit of algebra, if we collect like terms, if minus p comes to the left hand side, it becomes plus p. If plus 20 goes to the right hand side, it becomes minus 20. What we have is 2p plus p gives us 3p. 35 minus 20, that gives us 15. We divide both sides by 3. Dividing both sides by 3, we have 3 goes in 3, 1, remainder p, equals to 3 goes in 15, that gives us 5. Therefore, our equilibrium price equals 5. Having done this, it's easier for us to calculate our equilibrium quantities. We first of all calculate our equilibrium quantity supplied. Recall that your equilibrium quantity quantity supply function was 20 plus 2p. Therefore, your equilibrium quantity supplied will be 20 plus 2, substituting the equilibrium price, which was 5 naira, for your p in the equation. What we have is equilibrium quantity supplied will be equals to 20 plus 2 into 5, and that gives us 20 plus 10, which equals to 30. We do the same thing for quantity demanded function. Remember that our quantity demanded function was QD equals to 35 minus P. So our quantity demanded will be 35 minus 5, which equals to 30. Question B says that find the quantity bought and sold in the market at 2 naira and at 8 naira. Now, at 2 naira, quantity demanded function is 20 plus 2p. So substituting 2 for p, we have quantity supplied equals to 20 plus 2 into 2. And that gives us 20 plus 4. 20 plus 4 equals to 24. Also, quantity demanded function is 35 minus p. So where we see p, we are going to substitute 2 naira. Where the prices in the market, was 8 naira. So at 2 naira rather. So that gives us 35 minus 2, and that gives us 33 for quantity demanded at 2 naira. At 8 naira, we also repeat the same process. We put 8 naira for p in quantity supplied. That gives us 20 plus 2 into 8. That gives us 20 plus 16, and that gives us 36. And for quantity demanded, 35 minus 8, that gives us 27. We can arrange our information that we have in a supply and demand schedule. At 2 naira, remember that at 2 naira, quantity supplied was 24. Quantity demanded was 33. At 8 naira, quantity supplied was 36. Quantity demanded was 27. At equilibrium, which was at 5 naira, if you recall, at 5 naira, quantity supplied was 30 and quantity demanded was also 30. So we've just answered question B. Question C says determine the excess demand or excess supply at 2 naira and at 8 naira. So that's what now we're going to calculate our excess demand and excess supply at 2 naira and 8 naira. Now at 2 naira, you observe that at 2 naira, quantity demanded was 33 and quantity supplied was 24, showing that quantity demanded is more than quantity supplied. Therefore, we have an excess demand. Excess demand is defined as quantity demanded minus quantity supplied. Now, quantity demanded function was 30 minus P, which is 30 minus 2, minus quantity supply function was 20 plus 2P, making 20 plus 2 into 2. When we simplify this gives us 33. When we supply quantity supply function, that gives us 24. 33 minus 24, that gives us 9. The excess supply is at 8 naira because quantity supplied at 8 naira was 36 and quantity demanded at 8 naira was 27, showing that we have an excess supply than excess demand. So we have excess supply over demand. Now at 8 naira, showing we have an excess supply. Excess supply is defined as quantity supplied minus quantity demanded function. Our quantity supply function was 20 plus 2P, that is 20 plus 2 into 8. And remember that our quantity demanded function was 35 minus P, showing that we have 35 minus 8. Now when we subtract these two, what we have is 6. We can represent our information in a diagram using our demand schedule. On the y-axis is our price, and on the x-axis is the quantity demanded and supplied. If you look at your table, you see that at 2 naira, quantity demanded at 2 naira was 24 and quantity supplied was 33. So quantity demanded, let's take the quantity demanded function first. Now for quantity demanded at 2 naira, you observe that at 2 naira, quantity demanded was 33, showing 33 at this point. At 5 naira, quantity demanded was 30. At 5 naira, quantity demanded was 30, which is our equilibrium point. Then at 8 naira, quantity demanded was 27 at this point. Then for quantity supplied, at 2 naira, quantity supplied was 24. At 2 naira, quantity supplied was 24. At 5 naira, quantity demanded was 30. And at 8 naira, quantity demanded was 36. So we have our demand and supply function. Now, the point at which quantity demanded equals quantity supplied is called your equilibrium position. Let me use short form, equilibrium position. Then that's your equilibrium position. At this point, you observe that your supply is more than demand. So we call this position, we call it excess supply. We call it excess supply. If you observe, you see that here demand is more than supply. Therefore, we call this position, we call it excess demand. Let me use short form, demand. So we've shown our equilibrium position, our excess demand, and our excess supply. Also, this position is called your equilibrium quantity. This is your equilibrium quantity demanded and quantity supplied. And this position, this point, is your equilibrium price. is your equilibrium price. So you have your equilibrium, there you have it. 30 is your equilibrium quantity demanded and quantity supplied. 5 is your equilibrium price. This point where supply curve cost demand curve is your equilibrium position. This is your excess supply and this is your excess demand. If you have questions, please drop in the question and answer section, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.